Well, hello, my friends. Blessing and peace on you in the mighty name of King Jesus. Welcome, guys, to the Wednesday night experience here at Open Door Church. Coming at you strong from the platform here today. And we are in a sermon series, just asking for a friend, Like, oh, really? You know, that whole thing of, well, hey, a friend wants to know because you don't feel very comfortable asking a certain question. Guys, we're attempting last week, this week, and the next 2 weeks to be answering, what's your answer for these really tough questions? And it's not because we have all the answers. It's just like, well, this is what I think concerning that. Now, it's not like a huge biblical study. We would definitely talk about the Bible, but I mean, it's kind of from the hip. So it's very relational. It's going to be very conversational. And joining me here today is our executive pastor of Open Door Church, Pastor Jerry Sellers. What's up, man?
Not much, sir.
Yeah.
Enjoying the day.
You've had a busy day, haven't you?
Always.
Yeah, always. When have we ever not had a busy day?
Yeah. I actually slept till 6 o'clock this morning.
What? Did you really?
It was nice.
Man, that's no joke. People don't know that about you, but I mean, it's like very common for you to go to bed at 8 or 9 and wake up at 2 or 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And then you're up for the whole rest of the day.
Yeah.
And that's like a very common thing. You ask me, I'll say, so what time did you get up? You'll say 2:22, man. I'm like, golly, man, or whatever. I'm kind of weird in my sleep patterns. Sometimes I can sleep very well, and then sometimes I can't at all. But dude, we live extreme lives.
We do. We're very busy lives, very focused lives. Every once in a while we get to play a little bit, but man, there's a world out there.
Yeah. And
we have an agenda.
We just got through doing a big campaign for this kid that needed to have this brain surgery. And I mean, that's part of the things, I was talking to some pastors and they were asking me to come and do a pastor's conference. And this was a few weeks ago. I was in Florida and I was super honored because it's a monster mega church, incredible. And they're asking me. And so I was having lunch with these pastors and they're like, well, let me just ask you a couple of questions just about pastoring. And they're like, yeah, what's the toughest job about pastoring? And I'm like, well, first of all, let me ask you a question. Do you think that pastoring is the toughest job? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, you ain't doing enough. If pastoring the church is the hardest thing that is within your life, you are not doing enough. Because me and you pastored this church. It's a big church. It has thousands of people in it, but it is not the hardest thing we do.
No.
You're like, no.
It might be top 10.
Yeah, that's
maybe.
exactly right.
Yeah.
But I mean, we get that this is literally heaven or hell for somebody. Yeah. It is literally life or death for somebody. It is literally freedom or slavery for somebody. And we got to get stuff right. And we have to do stuff. And we have all these breakthroughs. Last week, Josh Tolley was with me.
Yes.
And one of the phrases that he said that I will carry with me for the rest of my life is God is a God of breakthrough, but you have to follow through.
Yeah.
And breakthrough follows follow through. I'm like, yes.
During the sermon, when he preached that, I think it was the second service we heard that, I immediately said, I'm going to be the first one to tweet that. I went immediately to Twitter and put it down. Then I saw later afternoon, Tabitha actually tweeted it too. And
She'd already done it.
I beat you.
Yeah, that's good. Oh, that's good. Yeah, she beat her. That's good. No, man, that's so real. That whole thing of, you're going to have to do a lot of things. There's a million little things that have to be taken care of in order for the one thing to go right. And a lot of people in ministry, you and I, full-time ministry, you and I have been full-time pastors for a long, long, long time.
Yes,
how long have you been a full-time pastor?
I'm 31 years.
You're 31 years. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's see. I'm probably 31 years.
Yeah, because you were doing ministry before
we started Open Door. Yeah.
You was youth pastor for a while.
I was.
Pastor Jim.
Yep. I've been a youth pastor. I was a children's pastor. I was a youth pastor. I was a worship pastor. Mm-hmm. And I did those for different churches before.
I see the word pastor X times X times X times X. Yeah.
Yeah. So no, man, we did all that. And then what's funny is once we started Open Door, me and Leanna was, we were it, for years and years. And then Andy Daly came on. He was the first other pastor, we had on board with us, Brother Andy Daly. And he was with me for 16 or 18 years. He's with me for a long time.
Long time.
And he did an amazing job. He made he is a great man. And so that meant I was the youth pastor. I was the outreach pastor. I was the worship pastor. I was a children's pastor. I was a senior pastor.
Custodial pastor.
Yeah, exactly right. And that was me and Leanna, the whole time. But what's real is, I made the leap from little church to big church and made the leap from doing from being a big fish in a small pond to being a small fish in a big giant pond, meaning we have to have lots and lots and lots of teams.
Yes, sir.
I might be the most visible team leader, but 90% of the things that I get credit for, I'm not actually doing. Other people are doing those things. And I'm just the most visible and just the most vocal. You are certainly one of the most visible and one of the most vocal. But I think I'm going to ask you a tough question before we get into these other tough questions. Right on?
Yes, sir.
What do you think is the biggest difference between non-effective ministry and effective ministry? And what would you define as effective ministry and non-effective ministry?
I have to go back to the time when, in my own life, growing beyond myself. Non-effective ministry is if you're involved in everything and you have to do everything, and the fruit of that is only what you can multiply yourself. Effective ministry is when you trust leaders that you're growing up underneath them and underneath you, and you begin to empower them, and they actually go out and do ministry, and then the multiplication factor is so greater. It goes back to the book of Ephesians chapter 4:11. He gave fivefold ministry to the church to empower, train, equip, and release the saints for them to do the ministry. It's actually, if I'm doing the ministry, I'm out of alignment. I'm to actually grow people and grow the teams so they can be released to go do the ministry, because the multiplication factor in my effectiveness now is multiplied. That's the difference between 30, 60, and 100-fold Christianity. I can hit 100-fold if I have enough teams underneath me that I've poured into and released and trust to go do ministry.
Okay, so it's one thing to know that. It's another thing to apply that and to live that, because it's a very painful process.
Yes.
It's extremely painful. And this is one of the things that I have found out that I promise you is so true. You and I went to Canada here a couple of years ago, and we were listening to a podcast on the way back, and this guy on the podcast said the level that you're at is your pain tolerance.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Samuel Chand.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yes.
And I couldn't remember who it was, but I remember we were on that highway driving where there was no houses or nothing for, hours across Canada. And we were listening to Samuel Chand. Is that correct?
Samuel Chand.
And he was talking about, hey, I want to tell you, whatever your ceiling is where you can't break through, that's your pain tolerance. And we all looked at each other and said, I know that that's real.
Yeah.
Because the reason why I struggled for so long in not having teams is I couldn't deal with you have to change your entire life. You have to change, okay, so I have teams now. We have huge teams all over. Okay, what that means is I'm scheduled every hour on the hour to meet with a team. You are scheduled every hour on the hour to meet with a team. There is no, hey, I'm just going to float around and just see what the creative thing I can do today. Oh, no. There is none of that with us at this level. So we actually have to schedule creative time.
Yes.
We have to schedule downtime. But there is no such thing as non-scheduled time once you start working with teams. And this is the deal. Your time, if I can just talk, into the pain of dealing with teams, your time, okay, like if I'm going to meet with you, I can't show up and go, what are we talking about? If the meeting is going to be effective, I have to already be prepared for it.
Exactly. The time invested before.
Yeah. So that means every hour of every day, I'm dedicated and committed to making this thing work. And so then, all your friends that you've hung out with for 30 and 40 years, they're like, hey, you just don't seem to have time for me. Well, I don't.
Yeah.
You're not a part of one of my teams. I don't live a lifestyle where I can just hang out with people anymore. Yeah. Even my hangout time is going to be strategic now.
Exactly.
With people that I'm trying to learn and get filled up with, because I'm going to be exhausted again next week. And man, you have to have a high pain tolerance for that.
It is. And it's very hard to swallow as the Lord elevates you. He allows you to walk in that upgrade that we've been given an invitation to walk into. I've heard it all my life, but didn't begin to really realize this until I actually saw the ministry grow and actually saw what the Lord was doing, even as a youth pastor. As you go up, you do give up. And if you don't give up, you will not go up.
That's exactly right.
It's almost like James saying, and running a race and you're running around with all these weights. Sometimes you got to knock off the weights, and those are painful because those are relationships you love. Those are people that you really care about, but you realize if I invest time in them and continue to invest time in them, I can't go there.
Well, there's no such thing as pain. There's no such thing as change without pain.
Exactly.
There's not. And I'm sorry. I wish there was. But like a common thing that we have around here is everything moves so fast that whenever I hire somebody, I will tell them, okay, here's the deal. I'm not actually hiring you to do this job. I'm hiring you to do the job that is 10 jobs from now because we're going to be there a year from now.
Yeah.
And you can't be 10 jobs behind a year from now.
No.
So if you can't stay ahead of this, we will catch up with you. We'll pass you, and I'm going to love you, and I'm going to bless you, but I'm going to replace you.
Yes.
And a lot of times what happens is people that you hired, man, they haven't done one single thing wrong. They're doing exactly what you hired them to do, but their job has changed so much, and they can't do what the new job demands it is because you're growing so fast. Dude, those are hard things because it's church. It's not a bar. And I want to just say this, bars tend to be way more relational than churches are, but we're a very, very, very relational church. And we come across it all the time where what somebody is doing works for them, but it doesn't work for us anymore. And we're like, okay, we really need to go next level, next level, next level, next level. And what's real is we're going to have to go outside or around that person to do that. And why now are we going to continue to pay this person when we're having to hire outside people to do the job that person needs to do? And they're like, but that's a human being and that's a dude and he's done a great job for you and he's done what you hired him to do, but your job is passed. I want to tell you, it's tough.
Man. It hurts. It hurts.
It does hurt.
It hurts. I have to put on my other hat when I have to deal with that. It's difficult. I have to go almost cold mode for a little while because of the relationship you have with them and you love them and all that. But it is the truth. It just happens.
So if you can't get rid of high school friends, even though you're in your 40s or 50s or 60s, because you feel like you owe them something, amplify that by 10 million of somebody who's worked loyally for you for 10 years or 15 years or 20 years, who hasn't done one single thing wrong. They just cannot keep up with the pace of where you're at anymore. And so what I try to do, and I'm like, I told you whenever you first started with me, you're going to work yourself out of a job.
Yeah.
And I told you that. Yeah. And I mean, what's real is we're all going to work ourselves out of a job. And people that I love and people that are a part of me, just like you, I'll say this, by the way, your job is not being threatened or anything. You're good. But I mean, you got a place with me for the rest of your life if you do.
Yes.
If the day comes that we outgrow you and you can't handle the growth where we're at, you still got a place working with me.
Yes.
But then you're going to have to be willing to accept the pain of the change of there's somebody else that's going to be doing that job now.
Yeah.
And it's, I gave up being the worship pastor 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I want to tell you, I know that this is church and I'm not allowed to say the word sucked, but it sucked.
It hurt. And I knew it did.
I'll tell you, that right there hurt me more than, that change hurt more than any change I have been through since I've been in ministry, not leading worship anymore.
Yeah, because there's a passion.
Because there's a passion also too, because I don't like how churches do worship at all. I don't like how that they're not band people.
Yeah.
I am a band guy. And I think one of the things that we've always had that's unique to the culture of Open Door is we've always had a killer cool band. Now, we haven't always had a killer cool front guy, which is what you really need when it comes to doing big church ministry.
Yes, sir.
But man, we had an awesome band. And the band is very relational. Bands today and Christian musicians, they don't care if they're playing with another human being or not because they play video games 24 hours a day. They put their earphones on. They're not even aware that there's any other musicians on the stage. They're listening to a click. They've heard exactly what their job is, and they are reproducing what they heard. They're not coming up with anything creative. And I can't stand it. I mean, it makes me insane. I'm like, no, hey, hello, we're on the stage together. I'm going to toss it to you. You do a lead. And they're like, but I haven't listened to a lead 25 times and learned exactly that lead. Yeah. Well, that's because I'm not hiring that guy. I'm hiring you. You bring your lead. Okay, well, that day is no longer here, and I recognize that, and I don't fit into it anymore. And so I had to step away from it. Plus, I didn't have the time to do it. But dude, it was painful.
Yes, it was.
And I hardly ever play in the band anymore. And I want to every time the band is up here. And it's not because I'm not welcome. It's not because they won't let me. It's because I can't. I'm too busy. I can't do practice with those guys anymore.
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah, your schedule filled up.
Yeah, and you just have to be able to just know that when you change and when you give up things for as you step up, that it is painful, and it's painful every single time.
I remember when I was in Bible college, they were talking about change, and there's sort of 3 things that make you change. Number 1, you grow enough to change, which most of the time, if that happens, that's years later. You have enough money to change because you can buy the change. But the one that most of us walk in, you change when you hurt enough.
Yeah. Yes, exactly right. It finally hurts so much that you'll finally just go, okay, I'm going to change.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And so, and I'm like that because a lot of times I won't pull the trigger on something until way past I should have, until I just can't, okay, I just can't deal with it anymore.
Yeah.
I just can't. And that's not a good leadership quality to have.
That's human nature though. And honestly, most change, there's a few people that are very skilled with it, but most change actually falls in that 3rd category.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, man, that's really good. Okay, so I got a couple of tough questions for you. And again, this whole series, as we're just shooting the bull, and for everybody that's from out of town, as we're chewing the cud, as we are, what's another term for that? As we're just
swapping the slop.
Okay, I don't know that that's legit. But as we're just talking this thing out, this whole thing is called just asking for a friend.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, I'm kind of scared to ask this,
Yeah.
but it's a tough question.
My friend's going to ask it for me.
My friend's going to ask it right. So just asking for a friend. By the way, Pastor AJ came up with that.
Yeah.
With that title.
So obviously he's going to ask us something in the future and say it's his friend.
Yeah. Which he does that.
Yes.
I've noticed that about
Yes.
that. Okay. So I'm going to ask you about this. Okay. So you're in ministry. You have seen the best of ministry.
Yes.
You have seen the worst of ministry. Okay. And I have too.
Uh-huh.
And you have seen what church is good for and what church is not good for. You've also been a part of little church, and you've also been a part of big church. I'm going to ask you a tough question. Since you and I believe that you do not have to go to church to be a Christian, you believe that.
Yes.
And I believe that.
Yes.
Let me ask you this. Why should anybody go to church, and what are the benefits of going to church?
Okay. There's a lot of different bullet points I pull out. That number 1, Hebrews says in chapter 10, verse 25, that we're not to forsake ourselves, the assembling of ourselves together.
How do you know that verse? See, because you didn't know I was going to ask you that question, man.
It's one of my verses that's a default.
Yeah, listen, he is like that. I want to just tell you guys this. He is so like that. You could, all the time, I'm like mentioning verses, you're like, well, that's so-and-so, so-and-so, and that's so-and-so. So before you answered all that, where did you go to Bible college at?
Norris Bible Baptist Institute.
Norris Bible Institute. So that's like a Viking college.
Yeah,
Norris,
it's like, after J. Frank Norris.
Oh, it's after J. Frank Norris.
Yes.
Right on. No, I know exactly who
Yes.
J. Frank Norris
Yes, you
is.
do.
Right
We've
on.
talked
I sure
about him.
do. Right on, man. No, he's a world changer.
He was actually, back in that age, he was on the cutting edge. He was actually not very popular because he was so far out on the cutting edge.
Oh, yeah. No, he was
Had the
crazy.
first swimming pool in the church, had the first band in the church ever.
Yeah, I think, he did have the first band in a church ever.
He did.
Yeah. So he would have been a guy that was like, okay, he would have been big screens. If they would have had big screens,
Yes.
he would have had that and all that.
Yes.
But I want to tell you, he was mean as a Dickens, though.
He shot somebody.
Yeah. His brother did shoot somebody.
In his
didn't he?
office.
It is like, let me show you something. Boom.
Yeah. And then represented himself, didn't even have a lawyer.
He represented himself
won.
in trial. Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yes.
No, that guy was something else.
Yeah.
That guy was a force of nature, is
Yes.
what that guy was.
Yes.
So anyway, so you went to college there, and you come from, I'm going to ask you some tough questions. Is that okay? You come from a fundamentalist Baptist background.
Independent, fundamental, premillennial, all those things, yes. Very, very, like as you'd say, Attila the Hun, far right of him.
Yeah, basically Amish.
Yeah. No
And
hair
so-
on the face, hair off my ear, hair off my collar. In the middle of August, door knocking, full-blown suit, tie, white undershirt, sweating to death. Yes, that's where I came from.
Yeah, so and that's what you came from, and that's how you learned to serve the Lord, was in that.
Yes, sir.
And there really was, in spite of the radical change that's happened within your life since then, but there was some really good things that was in it.
Yeah, it taught me the Word of God, number
Yeah,
one. Number
absolutely.
two, it taught me discipline.
Yep.
Very much so.
Yep.
Taught me how to lead people to Christ.
Yes.
Yeah.
Taught you how to lead people to Jesus.
Yeah.
Taught you the importance between heaven and hell, and go, no,
Yes.
people need salvation, right?
Yes.
And I know all that because the high school that I graduated from, was Independent Fundamentalist Baptist High School, because I got thrown out of Joshua because I got in trouble, you know. I know that shocks everybody. What a shocker. Pastor Troy got himself into trouble.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did. And I went and moved in with my dad, and that was the little school that was back there. And it was just right down the road from where you grew up at.
Yeah.
And me and you are the same age.
Yeah. I actually went to junior high across the street from that school.
Yeah.
North Oaks Junior High.
Okay, right on.
Yeah.
And me and you are the same age, and we were in the same town. We didn't know each other, and we were both going to a fundamentalist Baptist church at the time, which is crazy if you think about it. For you and I to be the pastors of Open Door Church now.
Yeah, God's laughing.
I know. God's like, see, that's funny to me.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you've had a very interesting journey in Jesus, in that, you were hardcore fire and brimstone.
Yes.
Independent Fundamentalist Baptist.
Mm-hmm.
And then you went through a train wreck in your own life.
Yes.
And then, if I can just talk to you some tough questions about your train wreck. Your train wreck was not a private train wreck.
No, it's pretty public.
Oh, it was extremely public. It was next level extremely public because you were the senior pastor of the church in Burleson.
Yes.
Which was like the biggest church in Burleson at the time. It was like a thriving...
Yeah, we ran about 1,200 then. And that was 10, 11, 12 years ago.
And it was blowing and going. And there was a scandal that happened in your church that was not your fault.
Yep.
You had nothing to do with it.
Yep.
But the church, being the nice people they were, they fired you over it.
Oh, yeah.
They fired you over it. And then the church fell to pieces after that.
Yeah, and it's sad.
And it is sad. And a lot of people don't know this, but we were very envious of you and your church. I mean, we really I looked up to Jerry Sellers 15 years ago as he's the big church guy. He is that guy. And so I went to your youth group, went to your MAD, and went to that and checked it out and saw it. My daughter was actually saved in your ministry. My oldest daughter, Megan. She wasn't saved in my ministry. She was saved in your ministry. Daddy, I gave my heart to Jesus this weekend. I'm like, where? At the church in Burleson. Like, wow. And so I was like a big fanboy of you. And we were in this little bitty, tiny, struggling, less than 4,000 square foot building. 3,400 square feet was the entire building. I mean, all of it, bathrooms, everything was 3,400 square feet. And we'd been there for years and years and years. I heard about the scandal, and I heard about the injustice of it, and I heard what had happened to you. And there was this outrage throughout all of Johnson County over what had happened. Those guys who fired you had no idea.
No, they didn't.
Of what they were doing.
No.
They had no idea, because whatever went on in that boardroom when they decided to make you the scapegoat and fire you, and that's how they would distance themselves from the mess that was going on, which they refused to accept any responsibility for, and said, okay, we'll just blame it on Jerry and we'll just throw him out. They had no idea of, number one, the move of God that they were stopping that was in Johnson County, and how all the other churches in the county, how we saw that and went, man, you got to be kidding me. And I went up to your church building, me and my wife and Paula Ledbetter and Andy Daly. And that was the entire staff of Open Door Church at that time. And we went up there and we poured oil in the parking lot and we prayed for you.
When I heard that story, when you told me that back in, it was probably the latter part of 2010, it was a year later, because that took place June of 2009. I started attending Open Door probably the latter part of June or July of 2010. And then we finally went out to eat, and you shared that with me, and I was blown away. I've never heard nothing like that. I've never heard that kind of Christianity ever.
Yes, you'd never been a part of Christianity that poured oil on the ground and prayed for people and stood in the gap for people. You'd never been a part of a supernatural walk before. You didn't grow up believing in signs and miracles and wonders. You were actually taught that all that thing ended whenever the 1611 canon of the Bible was completed. You'd been taught that. And so, or whatever it was that they said it ended.
Yeah, when the apostles died off, the anointing died with the apostles.
So you'd been taught that, and you came into, I saw you the very first time that you came into our church. I saw you, and I didn't know you were there. My sister came and told me that you were there.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, are you serious? Jerry Sellers is here at this church? And I mean, it was a big deal to me. I mean, because to me, you were the man. And I remember, man, and I knew that you were in a bad place. I knew that it had been more than a year since you'd been involved in ministry. You walked away and you had no choice, number one.
Yeah.
But in one day, you lost everything.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine how hard that was for you. But a year later, and by the way, you went out and you rebelled against God and you went and got a tattoo.
Yeah, I did.
That was like, and it's a cross.
Yeah,
it's like,
cross.
just in case.
Just in case it's one of those that if you get a tattoo, you're out of the will.
Yeah,
it's a cross, Jesus.
It's a cross. Okay, Lord, I'm rebellion, but my rebellion only goes so far. It's still a cross.
Yeah.
That is so funny. We're like, okay, I'm done with ministry. I'm never going into ministry again. But I went back there and I saw you, man. And I always knew I always knew I would come across you. And I always knew I had to tell you who you were. And do you remember what I told you?
Jerry Sellers, to know who you are, you're a mighty man of God. And I've told you this before, it really made me mad because it was like, how dare you call me a man of God? I'm done with him. Not done with God. I'm done with the full-time version of him.
Yeah. With being the man of God, right? Which what you understood is that.
Yeah. And I was aggravated. And I sat through the whole service, just mattered and just mad. And, but I came back and I came back and I came back. And now I know why. Yeah. I mean, far as a man of God, but far as an individual, I always have had friends in my life, but I never had friends I trusted. You can't trust them when you're in rules versus relationship, because everybody's gonna break a rule. So why trust them? And just watching your passion, and it gets back to the question: what's the big deal about church? We started with a few minutes ago, but watching you with your relationship and your intimacy that you personally have with the Lord has so inspired me. I'll never forget the first trip that we really took together. It was January of 2016. We were in East Texas. We were in some cattails, duck hunting, and the sun was starting to come up, and we're this high in water, standing there in water, and you looked at me, and Jerry said, we have to be men of prayer. And what you really said is, Jerry, you've got to be a man that has a relationship like no other. Prayer is the communication line between two people, God the Father and a human being, and it's all about relationship. And so saying all that and watching your passion, you actually are my friend. You're my boss, but more than that, you're my friend.
Right on.
You are. And you get this because of church.
Yep.
It's an avenue. And you don't have to have church to have a relationship with God. But you have church because it helps you build your relationship with God, and it also helps you mentor and partner with others to encourage their relationship with God. The whole thing about church is Jesus died for it. Number one, I'm going to go where Jesus died for it.
Yeah, right on.
Number two, you're commanded to do it. Number three, you can't equip people the way Jesus says equipping people unless you're gathered together. So that I can go after all. You go to church because you come together with a group of believers, and the fruit of coming to church allows us to do ministry all over. You say all the time, if you can't do large ministry, you're not going to do large church. You only do large church because church will eat you up and spit you out.
That's right.
But you do church, and you want to do church excellent and at a large level because it equips you to reach people all over the world.
Yep.
You can't do it with 50 people.
Yeah, I also say all the time that, you know what? You don't have to go to church to love God, but if you go to the right church, you will love God more.
Bingo. And I was looking for that phrase a minute ago. I couldn't remember it.
It's okay.
Yeah.
No, it's good, man. And you remember some phrases I hadn't thought of in a while. So no, it's absolutely true. I don't want to do big church unless I can do big ministry. And this is something else too. To me, big ministry and impactful ministry is actually about equipping and actually activating people and go, you can do this. You can do this. I would also say this too. There's a way that God moves in the congregation that he doesn't move by himself.
Yeah.
Okay. And because it's time for us to close, but the bottom line is this. There is a way that God moves when I'm by myself that he doesn't move anywhere else. It's intimacy. It's powerful. And I have to have that kind of a walk. You know, it's what I was telling you in those cattails.
Yes.
You know, we were out there, and now here's what Jerry didn't tell you. He didn't tell you this. we're in East Texas and Louisiana, and they just pulled this giant alligator out of this
12-foot giant.
A 12-foot alligator. And in order for us to get out to these cattails, we had to walk out in water, and it was pitch dark. And we're dragging all these wooden ducks with us, right? And we're out there, and we got these bibs on. And I mean, literally, we're walking in the water where they had just pulled
About
this
150 yards in the water.
Yeah, a long ways in the pitch dark. And I just knew at any minute, something was just going to take my leg out. Or any minute, he was just going to disappear. And if you think Jesus and Peter are the only two that's ever walked on water, you watch this brother.
We'd have tried.
When a 12-foot alligator shows up. So we get out there, and we made it all the way out there, and I'm like, good. And we get all hunkered into these cattails. You kind of got to back your way into it and find it super thick. And we're just in this mess in the pitch darkness. And the Lord told me, Troy, share with him, just be a man of prayer in this environment.
Yeah.
You know, and share that with Jerry, how that's real with you, you know. And so I just said something, I don't remember exactly what I said, something just like, Jerry, we have to be men of prayer.
No, it's exactly
it was something
what you said.
like that.
Exactly what you said. And then not too long after that, we actually came to your house over there by the west part of Joshua. And we did some specific filming, and we actually filmed you doing your prayer thing on your door.
Oh, yeah.
How you prayer map.
Yeah.
And I've never seen that. And I said, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that was fun.
I was thinking this too about the church, and we got to finish up in just a second. Another good reason for the church, and you spoke about this the other day, about the brand of the church, which is experiencing real life. Yep. And that's who we are. That's our brand. You get greater transformation. You get greater of the 2 Corinthians 5:17. If any man be in Christ, he's a new creature. Old things are passed away. Behold, all things have come new. The full gamut of transformation. Yep. You get a greater return on transformation when the church comes together.
Come on, that's good.
Than when you're alone.
That's good. Well, friends, you've been with me and Pastor Jerry Sellers, our executive pastor here at Open Door Church. On this Wednesday night experience, as we've been saying, just asking for a friend. Just asking. I want to talk to you about some tough stuff. And we've been doing that. Guys, we're going to continue to do that. Next week, I want to have Pastor Leanna Brewer with me, and she's going to be up here with me. Oh, do I have some tough questions for her? How do you justify spending so much money on shoes? What's that like? How can
why do you only kiss me 5 times a day?
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one to ask. So guys, I encourage you guys to be with us next week. Hey, listen, if you need prayer or if you need a friend, you can always call us at 877-413-0888. Encourage you guys to come out to Open Door Church this coming Sunday, be a part of what God Almighty is doing here. And until the next time I see you, I call you the head and not the tail, above and not beneath, and highly favored of the Lord. Bye-bye, everybody.